Hello, I'm Dr. Nathan Gellert. In this video, I'll be talking about the process of focusing, which is the process of establishing a strategic direction with a client. Engaging provides a foundation for focusing. They are interrelated yet different processes. It is possible to be well engaged with someone, enjoying an energetic conversation, but without any clear direction. Focus in counseling is formed through a purposeful conversation that has change at its heart. When we think about focusing, it's important to consider the possible sources of focus. The first source of focus is the client. It is not uncommon for a client to come to counseling with a particular goal in mind. For instance, anger management, feeling blue, or relationship counseling. When a client can easily and clearly articulate a concern or goal, then that's where the counselor and client will begin to focus their work. The second source of focus is the setting. For instance, a clinic that treats clients with eating disorders will focus on that presenting concern and likely refer clients with other diagnoses to other providers. The third source of focus is the counselor. Sometimes, a client will present with a certain stated concern, and the counselor perceives another issue that the client is not aware of. For instance, a client seeking help for a broken relationship may only become aware of the seriousness of a pornography addiction when the need to focus on it is raised by the counselor. There are also 3 potential styles of focus that a counselor can adopt. In the directing style, the counselor sets the agenda and determines the focus of counseling. This agenda can stem from the counselor's own agenda, that is, deciding what's important, or the agenda of the agency. The opposite of the directing style is the following style. This involves the counselor simply following the client's lead in determining the focus of counseling. The third style of focusing, and the one we embrace in motivational interviewing, is the guiding style. In this style, the client and counselor work together to set an agenda for their work. The client brings to counseling the expertise of their life and experiences, which is matched by the counselor's professional expertise and experience. It's helpful to remember that these styles exist on a continuum, with the guiding style in the middle as a natural balance between directing and following. In thinking about focusing, it's helpful to consider the 3 possible focusing scenarios, which are when there's clear direction, choice in direction, or unclear direction. Let's discuss each of these in greater depth. A clear direction for focus of treatment can occur for 3 different reasons. First, the client may present for treatment with a clear concern or set of goals. If this is the case, then you don't need to spend much time on focusing. Instead, you might just confirm with the client that you are both on the same page and then move forward to either evoking or planning. Second, the agency where you work may have a particular scope of treatment. For instance, if someone is seeking treatment at an alcohol rehabilitation center, then their presenting concerns will be issues with alcohol use. Third, the focus of counseling may become clear as the counselor is engaging with the client. This occurs when the counselor identifies goals that the client may not realize or currently have. For example, if a woman suffering from obesity is seeking treatment to change her eating habits, the counselor might also think that she should address the eating habits of her children. The counselor would need to approach this respectfully and appropriately so as not to offend the client. I'll discuss how to do this in the next scenario. In the second scenario, there are multiple concerns and goals that could become the focus of treatment. This can be challenging for both the counselor and client. The counselor may feel pressure to use his or her judgment to decide which concern to focus on. The client, on the other hand, may feel overwhelmed by choices. This is why it is important to work together to determine where to focus. This is where agenda mapping comes into play. Agenda mapping involves exploring different options with the client and deciding which would be the best direction to take at that time. This can give the client a sense of relief by narrowing down the focus onto one single problem. I'll next share some tips for successful agenda mapping. First, consider the structure of how you ask the client's permission to consider different options. For example, you could say, "Would you mind if we consider some topics we could discuss?" Notice the use of the word could in this example. This hypothetical language is the essence of agenda mapping, in that it does not say we will discuss this, but rather gently suggests it to the client, which encourages collaboration and engagement. Second, work together to consider options for focus. During this process, remember to allow the client the space to reflect and express their preferences and concerns. Your job as the counselor is to affirm and support as appropriate. Continually ask the client to raise new ideas that might not have come up yet, and do include your own opinion. Let's look at an example of what it can sound like for a counselor to express their own opinion. One idea that I'd like to share is that we could start by focusing on how your lack of exercise might be contributing to your low energy levels. Would that be something you'd like to discuss? In this example, notice how the counselor does not impose his or her opinion onto the client, but rather engages the client in the decision-making process. The final step of agenda mapping involves zooming in. Up to this point, the counselor and client have brainstormed about many possible pathways forward, much like you might do when planning a route on a map. The next step is for you to decide together on which path to start down first. A final point I'll make about agenda mapping is that it doesn't have to only occur at the beginning of treatment. It's often a good idea to periodically revisit the broader agenda, and when one task is complete, agenda mapping can be used to determine where to journey next. The third scenario occurs when there is no clear direction, when the client has no clear concerns or goals. You'll often recognize you're in this scenario when you feel like it's difficult to understand the client's story. Keeping with the simile of the map, the client may seem like they're all over the map. You may be just as confused as the client is about what's going on in their life. This is an important phenomenological recognition on your part as to what the client is expressing in their life. The primary task for the counselor in this scenario is to listen to the client and help put together seemingly diffuse pieces of the client's story. Over time, the important pieces, concerns, and goals will become clear. Once this begins to happen, then the counselor can move with the client into the process of agenda mapping. Focusing is a process that requires collaboration between the counselor and the client. There are several issues related to focusing that are important to consider. First, both the counselor and client will be challenged with needing to tolerate uncertainty and ambiguity. The direction of treatment won't always be clear. This can be the case at both the onset of treatment and throughout the course of treatment. Just like being stuck in the woods, it's not always best to try to rush out. It's often better to work intentionally together to figure out the best path forward. During this process, you, the counselor, must resist the righting reflex, the desire to quickly make things better. Second, control over the focus of treatment must be shared. Both the counselor and client may have their own ideas about what to focus on first, or next. It's important to openly discuss different ideas and possibilities and work together to set treatment goals. Third, it can be easy to focus on problems, challenges, what's not working well for the client. Doing this gets in the way of building on existing client strengths. remember to keep your eyes open for even small examples of strengths and movements towards change. When you witness these successes, affirm them and explore them more so they can be further developed. Thanks for joining me for this video. In the next video, I'll be talking about how to proceed when the counselor and client have conflicting goals for treatment. Please click the subscribe button to receive notifications when new videos are published. And if you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button.